Hello guys, this is a review of the album Tardigrade by Simon Says. Before I review the album, I would like to give a little bit of history of progressive rock. Progressive rock, or prog rock, began in the 1960s, and the idea behind this music was this was rock music that was meant to be taken seriously. It incorporated other forms of music such as classical and jazz, and it was meant to be listened to, not to dance to or party to or anything like that. And it typically featured mythical themes, long songs. Songs sometimes took up the entire side of an LP record. And when you went to one of these shows, you would just sit there and listen intently to the music, take it all in. And this would kind of transport you to like another world for a little bit of time and kind of like take you away from your normal boring life. Examples of these progressive rock bands were Pink Floyd, Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Kansas, Starcastle, Jethro Tull, and many, many others. It primarily started in England, but you also had Kansas and Starcastle from America. You had Triumvirate from Germany. You had Rush from Canada. And there were many, many, many more bands from different parts of the world that played this music. This music was very popular from the early to the mid 1970s. While critics sometimes dismissed it, some critics, such as Time Magazine, picked two Yes albums as albums of the year. If you would want to get into listening to some examples of this early progressive music, I can recommend Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall by Pink Floyd, Fragile and Close to the Edge and Relayer by Yes, and some good live sets were Seconds Out by Genesis, and Yes Songs and Yes Shows by Yes. Now, this music was pretty popular all over the world, but starting about in the mid 1970s to late 1970s, this music, the popularity started to decline for a number of factors. One factor was that some of the bands were breaking up and some of them had personnel changes. For example, Peter Gabriel left Genesis to start a solo career. Rick Wakeman left Yes. Emerson, Lake and Palmer had some financial trouble where they were touring with a full orchestra that had to be paid, and they almost went bankrupt trying to pay this full orchestra to tour with them. I was a young man when this music started appearing and became popular. I was in high school, and I enjoyed this music very much. I enjoyed the great musicianship of guitarists like Steve Hackett and Steve Howe, drummers Carl Palmer and Phil Collins, keyboardists Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson. And this music I found to be very interesting. And I was also becoming an audiophile and becoming interested in hi-fi at this time. So this music had like a wide dynamic range, and it really, gave your system a good workout. Like all good things, though, progressive rock began to decline, the popularity of it in the late 1970s, for a number of factors, as I said before. One of the factors was that a new type of music was taking over called New Wave, and this also incorporated punk rock. Bands such as the Sex Pistols and the Ramones in the punk scene, and New Wave bands like Blondie, Talking Heads, The Cars, etc. These bands were starting to become quite popular, were appearing on the charts, were getting a lot of airplay and a lot of publicity, and a lot of people's attention switched to these type of bands. Also, in 1981, MTV started, and if you had an innovative look or a cool video, you could get airplay and exposure on MTV. So you might say, like the lyrics of a popular or a new wave song, "Video killed a radio star." People that didn't translate to video, they didn't do so well. Many of these progressive bands carried on through the 1980s and beyond, some with personnel changes, but in my opinion, their best work was behind them. Now let's go ahead in time to 2011. I was listening to the Progressive Rock channel on Slacker Radio, which is an internet radio service, and I heard a song played on there called Suddenly the Rain by a band called Simon Says. And I had never heard of this band before. And apparently there was a resurgence of progressive rock in the 1990s in Stockholm, Sweden, of all places. And many bands came out of this scene, and one of the bands was Simon Says. And Suddenly the Rain is on this album called Tardigrade. It's from 2008. And I picked this up on Amazon, and I had a chance to listen to it. And I'd have to, excuse me, I would have to say that these guys very definitely listened to Genesis. They were Genesis fans, because I can hear a lot of echoes of Genesis in this music. I can hear some Yes in there, and maybe a little Emerson, Lake and Palmer thrown in. It's a keyboard-dominated sound. It also has some of the songs have some good guitar playing in, but it's primarily a keyboard-dominated sound. The lyrics are somewhat whimsical and mythical, as most prog rock is, but it is. I find the songs to be quite interesting. I find the musicianship to be quite high. And the only downside I can say to it is that the lead vocalist's voice is not the best. I mean, he's no John Anderson or Greg Lake, but I think his voice is adequate for the music being played. And I think it's quite well recorded also. My favorite cut on the CD is Suddenly the Rain, and this is a rather long song. Sounds very similar to early Genesis. It clocks in at over 14 minutes. So I would rate this, excuse me, I would rate this album quite highly. Out of a star system from 1 to 5 stars, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's a very good modern example of progressive rock that I loved so well when I was a young man. So if you want to check out some progressive rock from a band, a contemporary band, I would recommend Tardigrade by Simon Says. If you have any stories of progressive bands that you saw, maybe when you were young, or some of your favorite progressive rock albums, I'd certainly like to hear about them. And once again, thank you for watching my review. Comment, rate, and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time.